Hey, everybody. Welcome and good day, everybody. This is the first part of a four-part series of federal grant writing. My name is Melanie Edwards, and I have been with the Wallace Center for 1 year now as a program associate, and I'm based in Washington State on the Olympic Peninsula on Coast Salish lands. We have a lot of new and seasoned members joining the call today. So just to familiarize yourselves with our work, the Wallace Center is a national nonprofit that brings together diverse people and ideas to co-create solutions to build healthy farms, equitable economies, and resilient food systems to support a future where all communities have the power to nourish themselves and regenerate ecosystems through just food and agricultural systems. Our work is delivered through the Food Systems Leadership Network, the FSLN, which is a national peer learning community that connects current and emerging leaders, strengthens individuals and collective leadership capacity, and fosters collaboration across communities. The goal of the network is to accelerate the realization of a just, equitable, and sustainable food system that generates good food and healthy food and health and opportunity for all. In this grant writing session, I am super excited to introduce you all to Dr. Barrett Vaughn, who serves as the Associate Professor in the College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences at Tuskegee University. I had the pleasure of meeting Barrett at the Black Farmers and Urban Gardeners National Conference last fall, where I attended a grant writing workshop he facilitated. And I was just so excited to invite him to share his amazing knowledge and experience with the Food Systems Leadership Network. Barrett has been awarded over $1 million in grants from the USDA, NSF, and other regional and state agencies. And in addition to his amazing knowledge that he will share with us over this four-part series, you can also pick up a copy of his book, which is called The Reviewer Focused Grant Writing, Making the Vision Plain so the reader can run, which I will drop that link in the chat for you all to pick up your copy. Uh-oh, I accidentally put an extra thing. With that, I will hand this over to Barrett, who is going to walk us through Federal Grant Writing 101. So welcome, and Barrett, so excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really honored today to be here. When I was asked to come and do this workshop, I was really kind of surprised. I went to the Bugs conference last year in Atlanta, and it was my first time being there, and it was really exciting for me. I was so excited. I would have rather been to some of the other sessions than actually be given mine, and I really didn't think that there was going to be that much of a response. So I remember speaking with the planner of the meeting, and I asked, so, how many handouts should I print? And she said, well, you probably might want to print 40. I guess that was the capacity of the room. And I was thinking to myself, hey, I mean, they got all these really next level, exciting, dynamic speakers that are at this conference. I'm just going to like print out 20 of them and go, and maybe there'll be, a dozen or so people, and I'll just kind of talk to them. When I went into the room and I started, and every time I would turn around and do anything, it was more and more people coming in and more people coming in. And it ended up being standing room only. There were people who were sitting on the floor. And I was just amazed and really gratified that there was an interest out there in grant writing. And, with the way that resources are going right now, it's kind of easy to understand why that is. And the needs are so great among so many different communities. If anything, if we've learned nothing from the last 2 years, is the really the instabilities within our global and national food systems. And hopefully a lot of these programs that many of you in the room are going to be working with and addressing and getting funding for are going to address those issues, and they're critical issues. We should not be having the kind of problems that we had over the last 4 years. I know it's a lot of different political reasons and different things that go into it, but definitely anything that we can do as an outcome from all of you writing these proposals and a good number of you getting funded will address those things. So I'm going to go ahead and start into my presentation. They've already given an introduction, but I did want to just, as a quick review, talk about the different sessions that we're going to be doing this week and next week. We're going to be going over brainstorming and capturing a vision, selection and defining an idea, structuring your objectives, and identifying measurable outcomes and developing, and I can't see it on my screen, but developing something that starts with a T. So for the most part, you may be asking, well, how is this going to help me? I'm applying for the LFPP, or I'm applying for the regional systems program, and I need some real help with that. Well, my biggest interest in this is that I'm teaching you about how these grants are really reviewed and how they're looked at. I wrote a book it's actually been a decade ago, and it was really cathartic for me to write the book. But the one thing that I wanted people to know from the book, I didn't plan it as being the world's best book on grant writing. And I tell you, even in the book, that I don't think it's the world's best book on grant writing. Well, what I did do is I said that there is a niche that may be interested specifically in how the review process goes on. And ultimately, a group of people are going to get together and they're going to look at what it is that you've written, what you've documented, and they're going to make a decision on that. And that's the standpoint that I really come from. There will be some nuts and bolts about the two programs that we're going to be focusing on. So I'm going to make sure I do cover some of those things. But by and large, I want you to be able to be successful at writing these grants and all the ones that you're going to do in the future. And so that's what I'm hoping that all of you will get out of it. I will try to have this be as interactive as possible. I know we have, almost 100 people that are in the room, which is mind blowing to me. And thank you so much for taking the time to come out. I mean, I'm really honored, a little flustered that there are so many who came, and really appreciative of it. So let's get started. But just a bit of housekeeping. So, please bear with me. If you can, and I know that broadband or bandwidth may be an issue, please have your video on so I can see if I'm making sense to you. This is kind of important to me because I do try to look at the faces that I see and try to tell if it's making sense. If sometimes it isn't, and I'll be able to tell. If you have a question, please raise your hand so that I may easily find you. I know things are a little bit different if you're using a mobile device, but if you're on a computer, there should be something that allows you to raise your hand somewhere under something, gestures or something else. I'm on this end, so I can't do it myself. And please keep your device on mute so that we will be able to clearly hear the person that's speaking. So if that's me or someone asking a question, and please ask questions. If you have a question, someone else probably does too, and that's how we all learn. Now, if you don't feel comfortable asking a question, the wonderful people from Wallace Center are going to let you know how they're going to be collecting those questions. And if I'm not able to get to them today, because we're going to have a question and answer after this hour-long session today, then I'll address them when we meet on Wednesday. Okay. So I know we still have a couple of people coming in. So a little bit of information on the two programs that this workshop is going to, or focuses towards, is the local food promotion program. And so LFPP program funds projects that develop, coordinate, and expand local and regional food business enterprises that engage as intermediaries and indirect producer to consumer marketing to help increase access to and availability of locally and regionally produced agricultural products. So the programs, there are several different programs under it, and they range from 25,000, I think it's 25 to 50 or 100,000. And then there are some that go from 100 to, $250,000, and some that go from 100 to 750,000. But they ask for a 25% match that's cash and or in kind. But with the Regional Food System Partnership, that program supports partnerships that connect public and private resources to plan and develop or regional food systems that strengthen the viability and resilience of regional food economies. And that goes from 100,000 to 1 million with a 25% match in cash. So I just want to be sure that all of you understood the difference, that difference there. And the focus of this workshop is this, and I've touched on it already. I want you to be prepared for the LFPP and the RSFP and every other funding opportunity out there to come. What I really want you to take from this is that whatever vision it is that you have, and we're going to talk a fair amount about that this first time, is to help people. I think that most people, most reasonable people in their hearts, notwithstanding how it may manifest itself, want to save the world and they want to help people. And that's why you're in this room. You want to save the world, but maybe a little portion of the world. And you've got ideas of how to do it. And the reason why more than likely you want to write a proposal is to get money, and certainly for salaries and those other things to support people, but also to help people. And that's really why you're here today. And so from that standpoint, my focus is to give you the skills to be able to look at some of these grant opportunities that are going to be going on and be able to be successfully getting them. And so a little bit about me, even though they've already done an introduction, and I won't go too far into it, but right now I'm an associate professor at Tuskegee University in their College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutritional Sciences. I've been on several dozen review panels from 2007 to present. I was just on a panel probably about a month ago. I had a little bit of a lull, and then I guess my name got recirculated through USDA, and I started getting on panels again. I've been awarded over 1 million. I just stopped counting. This is 2013 data, but that's kind of between different USDA programs as well as some other funding sources. I wrote the book in 2013, which is it's 10 years old, but a lot of it still applies, and I'm hoping to update it. And my epiphany in about 2005 or so is this. And I call it the 10-75-15 rule. So out of all the proposals that people send into programs, about 15% of them are just not good proposals. They're just not good. And why they're not good. And there's a lot of reasons. Understand that these proposals are sent in by people who are professionals, they're universities, or they're with nonprofits or NGOs or foundations or anything else. But either because they might not have had enough time, they weren't able to get enough time to get letters of support, they sent in a proposal kind of to the wrong program. It could be a variety of different things of why it ended up not being good. But there's always a percentage of them that are just not good. They're not going to get the money. If there was, if all of them could be funded, there would be people in the room suggesting that they not get funded, even if they could fund all of them. If it was 100 and they could fund all 100, they would say, with these 15, they're not right for this program. And sometimes there are instances where something that you've written is not right for that program. It could be something they don't cover. It could be compliance. It could be a variety of different things. 10% of most of the proposals that are submitted are excellent. Like, they've got the money. They're well put together. They're well supported. They are very clearly written. They're very, the concepts are very clear. They're very up to date. The budget is arranged correctly, as in, not too top heavy if it's not necessary. They're not, the focus of the money is really well put. A lot of different factors. And so probably about 10%. And that 10% is more than likely going to get the money, unless they run out of money for some reason. But in the middle of that, 75% of most proposals are just, they're good. They're okay. They're good. They're well written. They're well conceived. They're well supported. They've got a great plan. but unfortunately, they may not be getting the funding. They may not get funded. And so you have, a small percentage that are excellent and probably guaranteed to get the funding. You have a small percentage that probably wouldn't get the funding, even if it was darn near unlimited. And then you have 75% that are just okay. They're well written. They're good. I mean, yeah, there are some that are better than others, kind of depending on which set of reviewers you get, how they're really looked at, whether they understand that area or not, which is it's a crapshoot. But what I try to focus on in my book is trying to help you with tips that get you moving to the higher end of that 75 and hopefully into the 10%. And that's really the focus of the book, is several different things. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to go over a number of those different principles and tips. And so let's talk about who's in the room. So we've got 95 folk in the room, probably about a dozen or so people that are administrative staff. But you were asked during registration about you. And so this is data from actually Friday, so it's relatively up to date. And the vast majority of you stated that you're pretty new. You've tried, you've written some, you may have gotten some, you may not have gotten some. Or you've thought about it, you've tried it, but just weren't able to really get things together to be able to do it. A good portion of you, about 3 out of every 10, have written a few. May have won a couple, but you've written some, so you've tried your hand at it, and that's a smaller portion. And then an even smaller portion, about 4 or 5%, have written quite a bit and have won also. And so I really honor the fact that all of you are here, and especially those who've written and won, because that means that you're continuing to want to learn more and to increase your skills and such, which I think is an excellent thing to do. I'm going to pause real quick to just look at the chat briefly to see if there were any questions directed at me at this point. I would point out that the LFPP page and the RFSP webpage have been posted to the chat as well. And there is instructions in the chat regarding questions and my book. My book is $10. I get like $3 and change every time someone buys my book. So just food for thought. Okay. All right, great. So it's been posted again. Thank you. So this is who's in the room. And I would venture to say that this is probably the majority of people who are really interested in a lot of programs. Grant writing seems like a really daunting task, but what I'm hoping to do, at least over the next 2 weeks for all of you, is to make it a little bit less daunting, maybe a lot less daunting. And I really hope that all of you will go ahead and apply for the program, at least so they'll see that there's such a demand, so that in future years, they'll increase the amount so that more people can win. So we're going to go ahead and start with this session. Are there any questions anyone had before I kind of get started on anything that I've said so far? And I'll just look at the chat or try to look at the gallery if anyone's raised their hands, has any questions. If not, okay, great question. Question from Robin Hernandez says, when you mention a budget not being too top heavy, can you elaborate? Do you mean labor? I mean salaries, yes. And sometimes that's appropriate and sometimes it's not. But we'll talk about budget in a later session, but that is a great question. And thank you for, and my apologies for using jargon that everyone might not necessarily understand. So thank you for the question. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So as an outline, we're going to start here talking about your vision, your idea, how that's different. There's an assignment for Wednesday and some questions from registration, which I'll go over, which I think are going to give a lot of information. And then we'll go over our regular question and answers. So one of the things that I talk about in the book, and I've kind of touched on it, is that everybody has something that they want to see accomplished. And, unabashedly so, that's your thing. Some of you may feel, depending on who you are, that's what you've been put here on the earth to do, is, to kind of address a particular problem or address, issues within a certain community or certain kind of issues, period. And like I said, I think that most reasonable people probably feel that they want to save the world in some way. It's just, there's a particular way. There's a particular way that they're gifted to be able to do it. And there's a particular way that they're going to be able to, in most cases, particular people that they're going to be able to address or be interested in addressing. And so your vision really is what it is that you want to see accomplished. It's the goal that you want to see met. And so in the spirit of interactivity, can we have a couple people just kind of put up, either come on voice or put up, like, what do you think is kind of your life's mission to get accomplished? And you could type it into the chat and we'll kind of go over it. And I'll read a couple of them. Will you get the slides? Yes. Is everyone shy, or are you just typing really hard? Access to healthy food for everyone. Yes. Improving to support a thriving farmland network in Alaska to improve our food security. That's Monica Cobb. It was Cindy at KBIC was the first one. Increasing access to locally grown food. I'd like to build a coordinated local food system in Nevada. Build a residential home care in a rural area. Just and regenerative food for all. More local fresh foods in school snacks and meals. Connecting our farmers to our eaters. Helping people start and manage their food-based businesses. Farm to cafeteria. Helping Black and brown people get access to government programs focused on business development. I'm an equity enthusiast and wealth builder, so I enjoy helping Black farmers do that. Improve supply chain efficiency in New York State. I hope that's what NYS is. Making food systems more equitable and accessible. Redistribute resources to community-based and BIPOC producers. Connecting people to their food. Distribution network for farm to consumer. Increase access to institutional markets for local BIPOC farmers. Strengthening rural vitality through a local food economy. Create sustainable small acre farms that solve food deserts. Supporting local food production and access in our remote community. Help people seize the means of production. Just, equitable, and sustainable regional food system. Broadening equitable access to nutrition incentives for the most marginalized folks. Shorten the distance between people and their food through a network of farm stands. Reduction of food deserts in rural areas via viable local food systems. Revitalize indigenous food sovereignty. Same access to locally grown food. We just got a grant to make our fresh baked goods, etc., for our farmers market. Teaching people how to stretch food dollars with fresh food. Securing land and economic development, creating food sovereignty in Brightmoor to benefit current BIPOC residents. Land for soil steward, not buildings. Fixing the profound dysfunction that current government systems and capitalism and imperialism and white supremacy have created. I know this is not smart, but essentially that's what it is, getting reparations. So you can see, and I'll keep reading as they come. Everybody has a mission. Not everybody's mission is the same. But hopefully we can have an identity of what it is that we want to see in the world. And I think that for the most part, people feel, regardless of how they want to get there, that they are trying to get there. And people have different means. That's why we have the kind of world that we have, or kind of system that we have in the country, even though much maligned it is. Thank you. And so, you in your head, just evidenced by how you've written and how you've been able to articulate it and put it down, you have something inside of you that you want to see done. and it's important to you. That's why it's in your heart. That's why some of you, that's why you're here. And so you have a real idea of how you want to put it together and what you want to see in this world that you feel is make it better. And some of you have broad, grand designs, and some of you are very narrowly focused. Like you're saying, these are the people in a particular space, in a particular way that I want to help. And honestly, that's a beautiful thing. That's part of, I would argue, being a human. So essentially, your vision is what it is that you want to see accomplished. It's a goal that you want to see met. It requires support to see it through, though. And it's progressive and impacts over time. So what you'll learn is that over time, as you are successful in making strides towards that, things are going to change and shift. You're going to find that maybe you become more targeted. Maybe you become more regional. Maybe you increase the territory that you're actually helping. Maybe you become focused on a particular group. Maybe the elderly are the people that you want to focus on. Maybe people on one side of town, if not the entire town, are what you're able to be effective at. But essentially, it's progressive, and you'll see impacts over time as you continue to go to it. Now, here's what we're really talking about. Your idea is a written description or documentation of your vision. It's what will be done with a prediction of the outcome, and it's within a finite time and space. This is really contrasted from what your vision is, because your idea is what you are able, within a particular finite amount of time that you have to actually write it, that actually you're sending off to someone. So I have a big heart, and if I had about $10 billion, I'd write a check to all of y'all that went up there and posted what you did. That may happen. I don't play the Powerball, so I don't know if the Florida lottery or anyone's going to give that to me, because I'm in Alabama and we don't have lottery. But if I was magically, someone was going to send me a Powerball ticket that was the winning, and I had $10 billion, I would write all of y'all a check. Now, see, y'all, it's recording y'all a document. So when someone sends me that ticket, I will make good on that, because I don't want to get sued. But what people want to fund is an idea. It's a small subset of your vision. Your vision may be broad, but what somebody can really understand and support is a written description and documentation of a small portion of your vision. And they want to know what it is that you want to do, what you think is going to be the outcome of it, and how that can be measured, and over what time that's going to be applicable to, and where's it going to be. Is it going to be New York State? Is it going to be Nevada? Is it going to be California? Is it going to be Los Angeles? Is it going to be Detroit? Is it going to be Atlanta? Will it be all of Georgia? Will it be the Southwest? Where's it going to be, and when's it going to be? The next 2 years, the next 3 years? And what do you hope will be the outcome of that? And so there are a couple things that I really want you to come out of this with, is understanding a lot of what you're going to be wanting to do in terms of a career of writing these proposals has a lot to do with how it is that you are defining what it is that you want to do, or what your organization has been formed to do, and whom they've been formed to serve, and how they want to do that service. And so the more that you define your identity that comes from your vision, the easier it is to break that into fundable parts as different ideas. And as opportunities come along, you're able to actually say, this will get to this particular goal within my vision, because you craft now an idea that gets you a little bit towards there. So if using a football analogy, because I'm from Alabama, or no, I'm not from Alabama, I'm from Detroit, Michigan, but I'm in Alabama. you know, if your goal is 100 yards away, you know, someone can allow you to go maybe 3 yards, maybe 10 yards towards it. And so you've got to give them that plan to get those 3 yards. And those people who know me really well are probably shocked that I'm using sports analogies, but March Madness is almost upon us. So, but that's pretty much what you're looking at, is how it is that you're going to condense all of these things that you want done for so many wonderful people and in so many wonderful ways into something that you can write, that makes sense, that is cohesive, works together, and understand it's not going to fulfill your vision. Not if I wrote you the $10 billion check, then yeah, it probably would fulfill every vision you have in your head, except for maybe going to Mars. That it's just not going to happen. But it would probably fulfill everything. But someone's going to give you a small amount of money, $100,000, $50,000, $25,000, maybe $250,000, maybe $750,000. And that's going to get you somewhere towards where it is that you want to see the world going. And so if, you know, you're really looking at the ideas being a portion of your vision, and if your vision is A through Z, your actual idea may be A, B, and C, or maybe A, C, and E, or H, I, and J. Okay, so you may have a whole plethora of things that you want to see happen. It may deal with youth, it may deal with farmers, it may deal with rural businesses, it may deal with a whole bunch of different things of the way that you want things to go. But it's going to be a portion of that is actually going to be your idea. And so one of the things that you pretty much have to understand, and I picked the green ones, for example, because green money, obviously. Few funders support A through Z. Most just are going to do A, B, C, and D. So in this case, you know, based off of color, you may have a funder that will say, okay, I can fund Z and P and B and J. And since L and T are kind of teal, so maybe you might be able to throw some of those in because they're kind of related. I'll give you an example. The Food Safety Opportunity Grant, I did not know that they actually funded food safety outreach to food entrepreneurs. That's kind of a teal. I would have written that myself, but I didn't because I thought, no, it's got to only be for farmers, but they see them as being part of the client base. And so a lot of the times what you're really writing towards is just those different things that you know they will fund. And you're probably saying, well, why are you spending so much time on this? You're not getting us to the nuts and bolts. We're 30 minutes in, man. Like, let's just get to the point. Well, here's the real point. You may have a lot of things that you want to see done, but you are going to have to be really strategic in terms of identifying those particular things that you are going to reduce to writing. And it's not really going to have to be based off of what you think is most important. It's really going to have to be based on what your funder is going to think that they want to be able to fund, because they have a purpose in mind for what they want to fund. If you're working with foundations, they know what they want to fund and they know what they don't want to fund. So don't propose something in writing, which is your idea, that they don't want to fund. USDA has umpteenth different programs, and they are very specific about what things can be funded through which program. And if you're giving them something that's good and outstanding and needed for the community and everything else, but doesn't fit in that program, you're gonna go right to that unfundable category. Not that they don't, think it's a great idea. They may think it's an outstanding idea, but they're going to say that's not our purpose with this program. And more than likely, you'll get a very nice letter from the national program leader that says, we really appreciate your submission, but we think you ought to be applying to this other USDA program, not ours, because that doesn't fit into what it is that we fund. So there's an importance in knowing your vision and who it is that you are and whom it is that you want to serve and how you want to serve them and what it is that you want to ultimately see in the world is different from identifying those subcomponents, those different pieces of that vision that you are putting forward to be funded. And there are going to be some instances where you're going to say, yeah, my vision is from A to Z. I'm just going to put up B and I'm going to focus on B. And I know that there's a funder that will fund B, and they will be like, okay, this person is doing this one thing. They're doing it very well. They've got all their expected measurable outcomes and everything else set. They've got a lot of support in this particular thing. And yes, we can fund them. And they're going to do that, and they're going to do that very well. And they're going to focus on that. And sometimes you can have multiple different ideas that are wrapped up together in a package. And as long as they're kind of cohesive and go towards what it is that you say that you're going to do in that idea, that's going to make sense to them and say, okay, they've got these 4 components and they all relate together. So they're going to, work with this, that relates to this, that relates to this, and relates to this. And this is tying it up with a nice little bow. And these are their 3 objectives, or these are their 4 or 5 objectives. And they all make sense tying together to accomplish the goal that they say that they want for the funding that they're asking us for. And so that's really the thing. Your idea is a portion of the vision. If your vision is A through Z, your idea may be A, B, and C. Okay. And so I say this because I know for the majority of people that are in the room, you are probably part of a community where the needs are vast and great and dire. I know I am. I can speak for the communities that I represent. And I know there are a lot of people in my community who have wherewithal to be able to write grants and speak and publish and do a number of different things. And their whole thing is that they want to help. And when it comes to really sitting down and working with them, they're saying, okay, well, I've got this component for the youth, and I've got this component for veterans, and we have this component for the farmers, and we have this component for agricultural business. And that may all, with about a good maybe $500,000 and probably no less, work together to tie together very well. But sometimes if you have one opportunity where you could probably tie it together versus 3 opportunities where you could focus, okay, this is going to be for our youth, versus this is going to be for our farmers and production and value added, and this is going to be for agribusiness, and make some wins there, you're accomplishing your overall goals, taking steps towards it. And the takeaway to a lot of this that I hope you get, because I wrote a book that basically focused on reviewers. The reviewers are critiquing the idea, not the vision, and not you. I have a story. Early on in my career of writing grants, I was a new professor at Tuskegee University, and I wrote what I thought was an outstanding proposal and sent it off to the funding. It was a regional funder. It wasn't USDA. And I got this glowing letter back. Dr. Vaughn, thank you so much for applying to our program. We really saw that there was a great value in the what you were proposing. But unfortunately, you have not been selected for funding. And I was relatively younger than I am now, surely. And so, I was kind of hurt at the time, and, not as badly hurt as when you send a journal article manuscript in and they write red all over it. But I was hurt at the time because I didn't get the money. And so, after I girded up enough courage, I called the project leader and said, hey, my name is Dr. Vaughn. I'm calling from Tuskegee University. I was one of the people to apply for such and such a program. And I, just got my letter back. And, it had to be sometime if it was a paper letter, because God knows no one's using paper anymore, really, do these kinds of things. And, just got my letter, just want a little bit of clarification. They said, well, Dr. Vaughn, we really appreciated your submission. We thought it was really worthwhile. It ranked very highly in our project. I'm like, okay, well, hate to be blunt, but I'm kind of new. Is there some particular reason why I wasn't funded? They're like, well, we ran out of money. In this case, they probably could fund the top 3, and I might have been number 4 or 5. Bad project? No. Was it well written? Yeah, probably. Everything else was sometimes, but I didn't get into that 10%. So I just, and I think that might have been one of the programs that I wrote, rewrote again and actually did get. But I think that it'll be very important over the next 2 weeks for you to really spend some time with this process. Now you're saying, but look, man, like I have to write this proposal. That's all the time I have. My argument to all of you that are there, especially the skeptics, the more time that you spend on the front end, really thinking about your identity as sort of encapsulated between what it is that you want to do as your vision, what it is that you want to see, the easier it will be to do the rest of your writing. The reason why I say that is when you know what it is that you want to do or you want to see, and you can pick out those portions that you want to actually propose to USDA for this particular opportunity or other people later, the easier it will be for you to put it together, because you know who you're serving. You know what you want to do. You know what you want to see. You know what you need. And following that, you'll know what you need to measure. You'll also know how. But the more upfront time, head time that you spend kind of putting these things together, the more you're able to make the rest of the process a lot smoother. And it avoids, what you tend to avoid is a term that I use, and I probably should have trademarked it, is Frankensteining. There's a lot of times when you have different kinds of ideas, and especially if you are at a university and you are in a department, stuff gets Frankenstein all the time. You got 5 different faculty members, you do 5 somewhat related things, and y'all just want to mash it all together because you want to get this money. Maybe that happens at nonprofits or non-governmental organizations or extension or anything else. But I know at our organization, I just tell people, like, we don't want something that's Frankenstein. Like, you know, we've got 3 people that are kind of working together really well. We got 2 people that are kind of doing their thing. It's like, don't stick that on. It's just going to look like Frankenstein. I hope people are getting that reference. So I'm going to keep going. So your assignment, and I'm going to go into the questions, is a brainstorming assignment. And what I would like for you all to do is to write short descriptions of what you want to see accomplished or which goals you want to meet. Now you have 2 days to do this. I suggest you just try to find a quiet place and sort of write the stuff down. But for those of you who really need like a hardcore task, review the AMS page. It's been posted here. I would strongly suggest that you go ahead and review, if you were not inside the room, or even if you were inside the room, the seminar video. I know that I'm fairly certain that both of the videos should be posted by now for you to go ahead and just review it. And also to review the RFP for your chosen program. And those are, I guess, somewhere around 20 or 30 pages each. And then what's going to end up being really useful for you to do when you go through the RFP is to write all of the parts of the proposal that are needed to be completed, if you haven't already done that, and some of you may have already done that. And then list all the potential supporters who could write letters. And I personally would say it's vitally important that you have letters of support for any proposal that you do. And, you know, mayors are great people. Senators are great people. Congress people are great people. But some of the greatest people that people want to hear about are the intended beneficiaries. So if that's farmers, if that's rural residents, if it's agribusiness people, getting letters from them, from the people that are actually going to benefit from it, I think are going to be more important. But unfortunately, those tend to be the harder ones to get, because most of your mayors, city council people, governors, senators, House of Representative people, they crank these out all the time. They may even have an online form. You just type in stuff, what it is you want the letter for, when you want the letter. They go through it, make sure you're in their jurisdiction, and crank it out to you. Getting a letter from a farmer, maybe a little bit of a different process. So, but like, start on those now and just write down all the potential supports. And if you don't get everyone by the deadline, at least you will have given a good faith effort into starting to do it, because you have until May the 2nd, and I can tell you right now, I hope and I'm sure that all of you have already done everything you need to do to make grants.gov work. That you've already registered, you have your AOR, that you've registered with all those other ancillary services that are around grants.gov. I'm sure all of you have done it. But in the unlikely event that any of you have not done all of those steps, you need to do those steps quickly because they take time. Grants.gov is not the most forgiving of system, but the other systems that is tied to that you may be required to go ahead and register for, they're slower than grants.gov. And grants.gov is not immediate. So be sure you're on top of that. You got a month, please go ahead and work on that. Okay, so any questions on the assignment for Wednesday?
Barrett, there's a
I'm just
question in the chat that says,
okay.
how many letters of support would you recommend?
That's a great question. If you can get at least, I shouldn't say a number, but at a minimum, if you have 3 from the intended beneficiaries of the project or the program or the proposal. One of the, now I know if you say, well, what if they're students? They may not, you might not get letters per se from students, but you can get letters from, say, teachers or principals, or perhaps even, leaders of some kind of organization that helps students. Okay. Did you want to go ahead and just read the questions off? Because I'm kind of scrolling back and trying to.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Also, someone else mentioned in the chat, they said that they made a suggestion of drafting letters of support for folks like farmers and community organizations to help them expedite that process.
Yes. Yes. Actually, most of the farmers I know won't write the letter.
Yeah.
They'll say, you write the letter, you can bring it to me and I'll sign it. Some of them that I've known for years, they say, you write the letter, you sign it. And I sign it, I scan it. Actually, they're not going to sit down and write the letter. And the thing is, you say, well, that's wrong. Well, I've seen whole proposals that might have 10 form letters, but they had different addresses or letterheads at the top. Some farmers are sophisticated enough to actually have a letterhead, and you could send them a letter, they'll print it off, they'll sign it. Some of the farmers, it's just got their address. You print the letter off, you get it to them, you meet them in the field or wherever else, and they go ahead and sign it. And it's the same exact letter. And the letter is like, I am writing to support Dr. or Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so's or this organization's proposal, such and such and such and such. I am a farmer and I appreciate this kind of stuff. And I think we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which might be your objectives. And then they'll say, I really recommend that it be funded, and then their name, then they sign. And when reviewers see that, we see it, but the reviewer is going to focus on, okay, is it it's a farm. They're signing it. We know farmers, it's way low on their priority, right? Coming down, sitting down and writing a letter. We just know it's low on their priority. It's okay. They're very smart, intelligent people, but that's just not something that they're really willing to spend a whole bunch of time on. I have colleagues that don't spend, like, oh, I need a letter of recommendation. Okay, can you draft it for me? Send it to me. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's a question about like the homework, the task, and it says, when you say write all parts of the proposal, do you mean like a list that need to be done, or actually write those parts?
Okay, I'm trying to scroll down. I know are you going kind of backwards in the chat? Because I think I saw some earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the thing that I would say is if you just make a list, and I know that there are a number of checklists in these, but if you make a list of the things that are necessary, that's all I'm saying. Because I know what I've found, and I'm working on a completely different program, not this program with a group from another university, and we were in our meeting, and I was like, aren't we supposed to have such and such? Didn't somebody else in the RFP say that it needed such and such? And, on Zoom, they started looking at each other, kind of, Brady Bunch style. And they're like, we need to check on that. And I was like, yeah, I think I saw in the proposal that in the RFA that you needed to have X. And yeah, you kind of do. So it's very easy in the project narrative, you're going to think is like the most important thing in most proposals, but there's always all these other little kind of annoying little parts that you need to write. And some of them can be automated. I'm not saying use like AI or anything, but there are some programs that can help you write like a data management plan, some other things, without it taking over the world like Skynet. And so just, kind of making sure that, okay, you can make your own checklist. But most of these kind of proposals that are geared toward folk, they have checklists. Okay, another question.
Okay, I'm gonna just, this is a question they want to understand as far as the brainstorming assignment. So it
Okay.
says, like, write a short description, like how many words do you think that might be?
Oh, I mean, this is for you. You know how people say write a vision board? I know some people do that. Even if you want to do pictures, you want to cut out pictures, you want to get images. All this is a process for you to kind of figure out all of the different things that you think that you want to see accomplished. And short description can be 1 or 2 words. It can be that short.
All right, and then I just want to wrap up this section with some more questions as far as the letters of support.
Okay.
It seems like, there's like a lot of support, and what you said as far as like writing letters for people or templates so that they can go ahead and sign on. And then, so specifically, there's a question as far as, do applications specify the numbers of support to satisfy the requirements? And then, and just like someone else saying, like how typically they find that it takes so much time to apply for the proposal that they're scrambling last minute to get letters of support. So how can maybe you be a little bit more forward thinking in that?
That's an excellent question. And we actually I talk about that in the questions that are coming up after this. This is not the last slide. It's always, to me, it always seems like the process takes as long as you have. If you have 2 months to do it, it's going to take 2 months. If you have 2 weeks to do it, it's going to take 2 weeks. Unless you are like a super disciplined person, which I can't readily claim to, it's going to take as long as you have. Of course, in my case, being a perfectionist probably plays heavily into that, because I will edit it until I think it's absolutely perfect, and that will be at 11:59. But by and large, the process is just, you say, well, I feel like I'm scrambling. I always feel like I'm scrambling. The process is going to, and it's okay. Like, you should normalize a certain level of good motivation, good external motivation to get the things done. And it's never going to be perfect. So just understand, you're going to hit send at some point. And you're going to do the best that you can to get what you need. And you could send out to 10 people, hey, I need your letters. You could follow it with emails. You can follow it with a visit. You might get 3, you might get 7, you might get, and you're going to send the ones you have. What I'm hoping that you'll do is, if you focus on the structure of the proposal as much as possible, when you start, it's kind of an iterative process. You put things down, and then as you think about it and your brain sort of subconsciously runs it over in your head, then you remember more stuff to put in or things that you want to change. But if it's 12:01 and you come up with this revelation, it's going to be okay. I can't answer that question, Miss Genevieve Shack. I think we're all swirling down the drain hole very, very slowly. But the thing is, the process is going to take as long as it takes. Like, I've written proposals I knew were trash, but I was going to give it a shot. I'm not going to say they were trash. Let me be more specific. I didn't have letters. I knew that was going to be flaw number one. Didn't call the people I needed to call. Didn't follow up with the people I had to call. It didn't get letters. It was 11:59. Boom, send. I'm like, Barrett, this don't have letters. You're not going to get this money. But what I did get is I got a lot of information back that the next time that it rolled around, I was able to fix the part that I had done. And then I was able to actually add letters of support to it. I'm just making emphasis on letters of support because they seem to take the longest. What you're going to find is what most people focus on is that bigger bulk area where you're like your project narrative or everything else. And then you have all these other little itty bitty parts that they want that are important. And you don't want to give short shrift to those, which is why I kind of say that. Thank you for the correction. So are we formally going into the question and answer period? Or are we already there?
We're there. Yeah, let's keep it moving.
Okay, so this is being recorded. I know some of you might not be able to stay. What I would like to do is to go through the questions that were sent through registration and then circle back, if we can, to the questions in the chat, if that's possible. Okay. All right. And I'll try to go through these. And if there are any follow-up questions on these, go ahead, fire them. Okay. So these are questions that came up in a registration system. So question was where to start, for example, and where to find grant opportunities. So these are a couple ideas. USDA, NEFA specifically, and AMS, they have opportunities. Grants.gov, they have opportunities. Your state Department of Agriculture, they have different opportunities that come. A lot of those are federal flow through funds, which means that the federal government, mainly USDA, are administering them through the state Department of Agriculture. It may be worth it in your state to find out who it is or where that money would actually come through. For example, it may be the Farmers Market Authority, it may be their communications department, whoever it is, it may be your commissioner's office or your secretary's office, depending on your state, what that individual is, what their title is. Foundations, and you can, search Google agriculture grants, grants for farmers, grants for agribusinesses. Sometimes stuff will come up. The one thing that I would strongly suggest to you is if you use Google or use Office 365 or some other kind of calendar, you can put into your calendar a reminder of when you think things are going to drop. So let's say you found this great program, but it just closed 2 months ago and you're like, oh no, I missed it. Well, go ahead and put in your calendar maybe about 2 months before it was due to check on it again. And so it's just real easy. You put it in there, put it in your calendar, or if you have a paper calendar and you have a pen, then you can write on a paper calendar, check, such and such a foundation for this program. Because a lot of the programs are annual. They'll come up at the same time every year. If you're online and you go to a foundation, they have, sign up for our newsletter. Even if you create a brand new email address, basically for newsletter, because you don't want it clogging up the rest of your stuff, or on some email platforms, if you're able to sort of separate between, I guess they call it focus inbox or something like that, where they'll go somewhere that's not spam, so you don't have to go through your spam. Like, you could just have them all go there, and then, depending on how you want to check it or your notification or anything else, it'll pop up and say, hey, you've got something. And they may announce like, hey, we're releasing a request for applications for such and such a program. You'll be able to get them. But to me, the most important thing is to establish your identity through figuring out your vision, like what it is that you want to do. Because really, in some respects, that will allow you to filter stuff that you see. Like, you see it and say, is this part of what it is that I want to do? And if it's not, then you move on. You might say, well, it would be great to be able to get that money. Stop. Okay. To get that money, but it's not going to be good money if you're spending, you have an opportunity cost. You can't apply for everything. So you can start down that road for something that you don't think you'll get, but what you do think you'll get might come out next week. It might be doing a month, because sometimes stuff is just like that. Okay, next question. How to decide if a federal grant is right for you or worth the energy? All right, I'm going to give you some easy button answers to this. Call a program leader. Tell them what it is you're thinking about doing. They'll let you know, or they should. Easy button number 2, carefully review the previously funded projects, if those are available, or call the program leader and ask them about things that have been funded before. If what's been funded kind of aligns with what it is that you're trying to do, it might be worth it to you or worth the energy. If it seems like, if they're kind of tentative with what they're saying, they say, oh, well, you know, we don't think that kind of fits, but maybe you still want to apply. They're just trying to get their numbers up. I mean, they have their own metrics as project leaders. Like, they want to say 50 people applied and we funded 10. They can't say 10 applied and we funded 10, because it looks like you don't have any kind of, evaluation. It's like you're just funding anyone who writes, right? They would like more people to apply. Study the order of what is listed to be fundable in RFA. This is kind of look at what they say and the order of what they say. If what it is you'd like to do or like to propose kind of fits early in that list, then it's probably worth your energy. If you're also if you're down in sort of the also ran we kind of fund this too kind of section, you might say maybe it's not worth the energy. You might look at it the other way to say, if mine is unique and they don't really talk about it that much, and I will definitely put that together, because it will differentiate itself from the rest, because it's not like everything else that they've gotten. So use your judgment. Do some quick math, figure out how much you really get to work with to do the project. How much money are they giving? How much is your indirect cost rate? What is their allowable things? That doesn't take that long to figure out. That's how you can decide whether it's worth your energy. This may seem like the same question, but it's actually not the same question. What is worth your time when writing grants? Some seem to be so long for far too little. So it depends on the time and the impact potential of the grant. Will this grant lead me to more opportunities? It takes as much time to manage a $100,000 grant as it does a $10,000 grant. And sometimes a $1 million grant is even easier to manage. It just really depends. And how much is already written, how much secondary data is out there. So what do I mean by that? As you continue to write things, that you're writing letters, that you're writing brochures, that you're writing different things, how much of that can you really quickly access and cobble it to put something together? Because you're talking about time. You have a finite amount of time. You want to put this together, and you're saying, it seems like it's going to be a lot. If you're going to have to start from scratch, it's going to take you more time. If you've got some existing verbiage that either you have written or other people in your organization have written, or that there's some secondary data out there that you can kind of refer to, in terms of maybe the census has great data, or some foundations have some great data that actually study what it is that you're interested in, and you can sort of cite, not plagiarize, but cite some sections of, say, reports or booklets or those kinds of things to kind of build your case, then do that. What is more important in developing the outline? This is my opinion. Budget first, objectives, and impact. Like, how much do you have to play with? When you develop what it is that you want to do, I remember I was writing a proposal. I was hoping to take like 24 farmers to Chicago for a conference that I thought was, as the kids say, dope. And then I looked at how much that was going to be to fly them to Chicago, and I thought maybe 8 might be better. Tighter group, more intimate, just less money. Objectives, what can you do with what you're given? 3 objectives, 3 is like a magical number. But what can you do? What are your objectives? Do they tie to each other? Do they relate to each other? Do they make sense along with each other? That's important. Impact. How can you create the greatest impact? So I, worked on a proposal, and, I could fund one student for 3 years, or I could fund 6 students for 3 summers and let the rest of the campus kind of take care of stuff. So, I mean, sometimes you have to make decisions about, okay, how do I get the most bang for the buck? Because ultimately, the people that are reading it are going to look. Some of them are going to do the math to say, oh, okay, well, this is only going to affect 10 students instead of 50. This person is affecting 10 students. This person is affecting 50. Or this person is dealing with 1 county farmers, and this one is half of the state. People look at those things. They're looking at it. So this is a great question that ties in. What does USDA look for in particular among their grant awardees? Okay. USDA is perhaps the only major government funding agency that segments the budget between how much will go to the proposing organization and how much will go to the tax-paying public. That is to say, your farmers, student clients, agribusinesses, rural residents, whatever it is. Very few other organizations do their budgets that way. Most of the time when you have a budget, they have travel, they have salary, they have stipends, they have whatever else it is that's a budgetary item. It's just there. USDA breaks it out, like how much is, your travel versus how much is participant travel. How much are your student stipends versus how much are the participant stipends? Because they are interested in how many people will be impacted directly or indirectly, and they value proof in the form of letters. So you can, when you set up a USDA budget, it's not not maybe necessarily for this program, but for a lot of their programs, they want to know how much is being spent toward, and people can do the math. You have $100,000 project, or I'll use better numbers. You have a $500,000 project. You're spending $300,000 on yourselves. That's your salaries, your consultants, your this. But you have your indirect costs, which might be $50,000. So all you have left is $150,000 for the actual people. So you're actually spending twice as much on 7 people that you're going to hire or have as consultants, but for the 250 people that you claim are going to be beneficiaries, you're spending half as much. They look at that stuff. But USDA looks at that. Like other organizations, they don't necessarily have the same mission as USDA. USDA looks for impact, and we'll talk about the logic model later. How many of you through gestures have, I don't know, I won't do that poll. Don't set anything up. Just those of you who haven't looked at logic model before, we're going to look at it. I think it's a great planning tool. All right. Another question from registration. Best practices. Here are a couple. Spend your time wisely. There are far more parts than you realize in the proposal. Don't get caught at 11:58 trying to write something to send it in at 11:59. Read the RFP, the RFA, the NOFO, whatever it is, carefully, page by page, word by word. Just read through it. Make sure you know what's expected. Start with the budget, budget narrative, project summary first. That's the best practice of mine. I figure out how much money I have to spend, who it's going to, and then I can tell you what I'm going to do because I know what I can spend and what I plan to spend it on. Then I get the project summary. Ask for your letters early. I've said that before, and then look at previously funded projects. Okay, next one. Strategic deliverable and metric of success development. Very good question. All right, in short, because we're going to touch on this later, you should be certain that your expected measurable outcome is expected. That is to say, it is something that you are sure will occur, that it is measurable, that it can be measured in as easy as possible a manner, and that it is an outcome. and not an output, as they are different. We'll discuss the logic model later, but making sure that your outcome, that there will be a change in knowledge, behavior, or condition. And that is the language of USDA, particularly in extension, when they talk about how what it is that they fund impacts the taxpayers. Always talk about USDA and saying it's a closed loop. The taxpayer pays their taxes to the government. The government assigns a certain amount of money to USDA. USDA assigns a certain amount to the universities through extension, and then extension is supposed to offer training and science-based training and technical assistance to the public that paid for it. So you don't see that in a lot of different units that get money, get federal money, but you can clearly see how the money that the taxpayers pay goes to the government, goes to USDA, goes to extension at the universities in the states, and then it comes right back to the people. So it's a closed loop. So that's kind of why that's important for them. All right, so if we want to go ahead to questions and answers in the time that you have dedicated that I have remaining.
Yeah, we have had quite a few questions show up in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for contributing. One of the questions is, what does matching with cash or in kind mean? Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly. Okay. So in kind matching. All right, I'll use some relatively simple numbers. Let's say that you figure out that everything you want to do for the project, everything that you want to do for the project is going to cost $100,000. USDA, if they say it can be in-kind support, is going to expect that you are covering through either state funds, not federal flow-through funds, not funds that the federal government came to the state, they came to you, but through state funds that are either direct from the state or from a foundation or from whatever enterprise you have going on, but definitely just non-federal, that you're paying for 25% of this. That you're paying, like, you're saying your total project cost is actually $100,000. The federal government is going to say, okay, we're paying you 75. You have to come up with the $25,000, and you have to prove to us that you have that money. So if it's cash and you want it to be actual money, then you need to send them some documentation that proves that you have that money. Now, I'm not going to make any suggestions. I would suggest that you either go back over to RFA or contact a national project leader and say what would be documentation of that. They may want it up front. They may want it later at some point. Okay. So that's how it works. They're going to give you 75, which of course is, they're not going to send you a check for $75,000, but they're going to allot in their budget $75,000 to you for a $100,000 project. Now, in kind is when you may use maybe salaries. I think that's the easiest thing for people to do, is to say, okay, we've got salaries that are paid for by some other source, and we're going to put this person's salary on the project for the $25,000. Or it could be facility rental. It could be some in-kind support that company is going to give you X, Y, or Z, but typically it needs to be something that's under your own control.
Ellie, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something, because this is like one of those little nitty gritty details about these grants. And someone actually asked in the chat for at least FMPP, LFPP, and RFSP, which are the grants that Wallace and I would say knows most about. The 25% match is 25% of the total federal ask. So if you're asking for $100,000 from the federal government, then you need $25,000 of match. So not 25% of the whole ask, but 25% of just that federal ask. I just wanted to clarify that. It's a little.
So just
tricky.
Forget my math that I just got wrong. I did it wrong. I was just on a project that wasn't with USDA and they calculated the other way. So
It's
forgive me
okay.
for
Yeah,
that.
it's just like a little detail that can screw you up. So I wanted to make sure that
Right. Because
everybody knew, at least for
we
these
were
grants. Yeah.
the project that we just did was for 3 million. It was a multi-institutional. And they basically were saying you need to prove to us that you have $750,000. And so between the 3 institutions, we had to like cobble that together. But we knew they were only giving us 2.25 million. Like we had to come up with the rest. So forgive me. I screwed that one up, but make sure you understand that or call it NPL and they'll be able to give you better examples. Okay, let's keep going.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you. Um, so another question is for planning and designing grants, is it expected or acceptable to be more top heavy?
It depends. I have seen some top heavy grants, and let me explain. A grant that has a large portion, if not the majority, in salaries. The project was top heavy because they already had the facilities. They already had the equipment. The company did. They already had the equipment. They already had the computers. They already had the materials and supplies. So that did not need to be supplied. Essentially, what they were asking for was for money for their team to work on this project using existing equipment and existing materials. And so it was justifiable because they had what was required to do it. They didn't need to buy anything. They maybe a couple consumables they had to buy, but they were very small percentage of the budget. So yes, it was top heavy, but they explained it to say, we have all these people who are making sure that this process makes sense. So for example, if you already have, if you're doing this, you already have a facility, you already have linkages to the farmers. And essentially for you to make this happen, you need to have boots on the ground. Like you need, the person who's going to be the overall administrator of the thing. You need someone who's going to be doing the running or, the day-to-day stuff. You need someone who's going to be going out to the farms to check and, be the liaison. If that's how you have it set up and it makes sense because that's the way that you're running it and you don't have a real need for the rest of it, and you say, hey, what we have on our budget are these people, but you need to be able to explain that like it needs to fit. So I've seen projects that are like that. They're top heavy, but appropriately top heavy because it made sense in what it is that they were trying to do. But more often than not, I've seen inappropriately top heavy projects. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's it that we have on questions right now. I think we've only got a few minutes left, so this would be a great opportunity to maybe, Dr. Barrett, if there's any like last minute words of like encouragement you want to give folks as they go off before we meet again. And also, like, I just want to remind everyone that tomorrow, we just popped it into the chat. We have another LAMP grant session with the USDA staff. You can register for that call, and then Dr. Barrett will be with us again on Wednesday, as well as we'll have 2 more sessions the following week. This is recorded, and we will, as soon as we get the recording done, be sending it out to everyone who registered. I feel like I had something else that I was going to say, but Dr. Barrett, did you want to like give us any like closing words of encouragement? We see a few people in the chat that picked up a copy of your book, so hopefully that's going to be a helpful tool to help people as we continue this conversation.
Yes, well, I definitely appreciate all of you investing the time into this. The one thing that I would say is the reason why you're here is because there's a need for what it is that you want to do. There is a need. There are some vast needs in communities across this nation that desperately need some people to bring them some assistance. And you are the people who are going to be able to do it. And this program and other programs are going to allow you to be able to do it. So stay encouraged. My biggest interest in this and the things that I've talked about here is that you're sure and you're certain that what it is that you're doing is focused. that when someone is reading it, that they understand what you want to do, why you want to do it, and what the impacts are going to be. And part of that is being able to find out what all it is that you want to do, and then distinguishing that from what it is that you can actually write down and propose. And so that's the process that we're going to be taking you through over the next couple of weeks. And so there's a method to the madness. I'm not saying don't start writing on anything, but definitely the process that you're going to go through in the next couple of days, use that to inform how it is that you continue writing. And so if you get a chance to review the materials online at AMS on the program that you're applying for, if you get a chance to review that video, so at least you know kind of what it is that they're thinking about, and also, you know, doing the kind of the inner work to be able to figure out what it is that you want to see as an outcome, I think that will focus you more, and you'll begin to see that you're not just kind of going from grant to grant and proposal to proposal, that you're actually building a body of fundable work and things that you've been able to accomplish towards your goal. And I think that that's really the motivational factor, and it's needed, and it's necessary. If you're here, it's because someone needs what it is that you're offering. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Before we all depart today, also just want to remind everyone we have more resources available on our website. Ellie just popped that in the chat. And if you all could take a moment to fill out, answer our poll question about, like, if you had a chance to learn anything today, we would love to hear from you. This helps us so that way we're delivering, you know, valuable material to you all in the future. So thank you for taking the time to fill this out today. Annalena, Ellie, or Elizabeth, did you have anything that to share as far as like for the next webinars?
I think we're good. That was incredible. Lucas will follow up with another email for the link for tomorrow as well. And I think we can drop that back in the chat. But thank you so much, Dr. Vaughn, and for everyone for joining. That was such a great hour and a half. It flew by.
Well, thank you so much. And I will see you all. I'll briefly see you tomorrow, but I will see you all on Wednesday.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you here today. And everyone, we'll see you all later this week.